I want, dear ladies and gentlemen, to say that since 2006, when I first represented Slovakia at the European Council, I have experienced various crisis situations. But today I am witnessing not only a crisis situation, but above all the objective powerlessness of the EU to respond to this crisis situation. Several factors have converged here, because, on the one hand, we want to increase competitiveness, which requires expenditure. And on the other hand, there is still an interest in helping Ukraine, which requires expenditure. And then there is the war conflict in Iran and the surrounding areas, which means additional expenses for us, because if we consider how much more we have already paid for fuel just during the period of the conflict in Iran, this sum is already higher than 6 billion euros. All of this, when combined, creates an extraordinarily explosive mixture. And I am not surprised that at yesterday's Eurozone meeting in the presence of ECB representatives, it was clearly stated that we must expect that interest rates will rise. We must expect that inflation will rise. We must expect that there will be further pressure to reduce the economic performance of the European economy as such. These are not my words. These are the words of the highest representatives of the European Central Bank. It was even stated that even if the war in Iran ended tomorrow, it would take several months for things to return to some sort of normalcy. This morning I saw some outputs, among other things, claiming that Slovakia supposedly blocked a loan for Hungary. Well, you know that's not true. I think things need to be called by their right names, but I understand that these intentions, this malice, is only aimed at further increasing the tension within Slovak society, because I understand that there is also a part of the Slovak population that looks at Ukraine differently than I do, or the generation of people who subscribe to the policies I advocate. The European Union, in the format of so-called enhanced cooperation, decided in the past on a 90 billion loan for Ukraine. It concerns military loan, because a substantial part of these funds, 60 billion, is to be used for armament purposes, and 30 billion is to be used for the functioning of Ukraine as such. When approving this loan, 3 countries refused to participate in the loan and will not incur any financial costs associated with this loan. And these countries were the Slovak Republic, the Czech Republic, and Hungary. So, only 24 countries in the extended cooperation agreed to provide a loan to Ukraine. It was as if it was overlooked at the time that another decision would be needed, one that requires unanimity, and that is the decision which concerns the European budget. I will not go into details now. At that time, the Hungarian government said it would not give consent, and therefore unanimity was not achieved. I see strong political arguments at the disposal of Viktor Orban. These arguments are exceptionally strong. I have also politically supported him regarding his political vision of the whole situation. Since there was no progress yesterday regarding the Druzhba pipeline, as I indicated at the National Council's Integration Committee, I did not support the conclusions of yesterday's summit on Ukraine. These were very supportive conclusions. As you know, you read everything for Ukraine. I refused to support it, so yesterday's conclusions were essentially accepted or supported only by 25 member states, without Slovakia and without Hungary. So once again, please, because I don't have the space or the means to repeat it every day, to correct the media. There was no decision on any blocking made yesterday. The loan was blocked. We did not vote yesterday on the conclusions concerning Ukraine, and we did not move forward at all in the case of unblocking, nor in the case of the Druzhba pipeline. When I watched President Zelensky's speech yesterday, because he was not directly present at the meeting and dealt with it through video, I got a feeling that if anyone is running the EU here, it's Mr. Zelensky. Whatever he asks for, he gets. Whatever he refuses without any pushback from the European Union. All kinds of things you published, all kinds of things you write. No monitoring committee visited Brody. There's nothing there. Nothing. The Ukrainian side didn't let anyone into this location, so nobody still knows the condition of this pipeline, whether it's damaged or not. If it's damaged, let's fix it. We offer technical assistance. The EU offers technical capacities, and for that I thank the Commission, which offers financial capacities. So together we can repair this pipeline fairly quickly. It is completely ridiculous that President Zelensky talks about another 6 weeks. He is specifically talking about the elections in Hungary. It needs to be stated that Zelensky is exploiting this issue to influence the elections in Hungary, because in connection with what is happening in Iran, he expects the situation to be very bad, possibly leading to a severe shock. Do you know what a severe shock means? A severe shock is an extremely unfavorable situation, not only for the industry but also for the economy, and especially for the citizens. At yesterday's meeting, we were again assured that the Commission, together with the President of the European Council, who is communicating with the Ukrainian side and requesting to carry out this inspection visit. I have a feeling that Zelensky is playing cat and mouse with them, doing whatever he wants with them. The fact is that he hasn't budged an inch, and he continues to significantly harm Slovakia economically, similar to Hungary. He has already harmed us with the gas pipeline, where we lost transit fees, and now in the case of the oil pipeline, you know that we have an oil emergency. We are making various serious decisions. And if we combine this with what is happening in Iran and the surrounding region, then the situation is worse than serious. I think using this phrase, worse than serious, is certainly appropriate. I understand that Zelensky is not in a good position. He is in a war. But it is not possible to have such a degree of ignoring and disrespect towards the European Union as he shows, and expect our only duty to be to accommodate him. I do not consider it right that the President of the European Commission said that no matter what, Ukraine will get 90 billion. It's as if she directly told Zelensky to forget about Druzhba. Don't worry about Druzhba, don't worry about the pipeline, because you will get 90 billion anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not speaking just on behalf of Slovakia, I am speaking on behalf of common sense. Now, when we are losing huge capacities in terms of gas, liquefied gas and oil supply, not having this pipeline available means further aggravating the situation. If the pipeline were functioning normally and supplying oil to the region where Slovakia is located, it would lead to significant price stability and overall energy stability, at least in Central Europe. I remind you again that it's about oil which we can take either through the pipeline or by sea, because an exemption is valid until 2027. I will continue to put pressure on the European Commission to remember that it also has member countries here, and that everything cannot be solely subject to Ukraine's interests. Despite the degree of obsession against Russia, which dominates within the spaces of the European Union, I am for rational, pragmatic relationships with everyone. Now, it appears that the entire European Union is like a post in the fence. We are not talking with the Americans, not even informing them if they attack Iran. With Russia, there are such relationships as they are. With China, relationships are as they are. We have no tools. We are just helplessly watching what is happening around us and practically do not know what we have to offer. What solutions? What solutions does the EU have today to help member states when there is no Europe? So please tell me, what solutions will we have within the European Union when there is no Europe? Because if there is a complete oil and price shock, then there might not be Europe. We practically have no tools to influence global events. I am interested in resolving this crisis concerning the Druzhba pipeline in cooperation with the European Union. We are in the European Union. We want to be in it. Slovakia is not blocking the loan. Please do not write nonsense. Slovakia is not blocking the loan. We did not vote for it. We are not part of it. And yesterday I did not support the conclusions on Ukraine, which, however, had nothing to do with the loan as such. The European Union must have leadership, must have its own foreign policy, and must be strategically autonomous. Above all, it must do something in the field of economics to be strong, because if we are not economically strong, we will not have enough resources to enforce our own views. Conclusions were passed concerning the common security policy without substantive discussion or any at all. We are watching the developments in Lebanon with great concern, because what is happening threatens the legitimate government and the country as a whole, and I think it could have far-reaching consequences for the entire region if this conflict continues. As for migration, I am pleased that everyone agreed that the only way to prepare for the migration that is coming, illegal migration, is through fences, to put it simply. It is the consistent protection of the external borders of Schengen. I use the term fence because, the fence was once a synonym for evil and devilry. And today, everyone understands that without physical barriers, proper protection at the external borders of Schengen, we are not able to prevent the entry of a large amount of illegal migrants into the territory of the Europe Union. The Slovenian Prime Minister informed about the interference in the course of the pre-election campaign from some semi-private agencies from Israel, because the current government in Slovenia is pro-Palestinian, and therefore by various methods these semi-private, semi-public. I do not know what Israeli companies were supposed to interfere in the elections or are interfering in the election campaign in Slovenia. So if we are going to do it this way, dealing with interference, I welcome it. So at the next session of the European Council, I will present how it was actually interfered with and not through some semi-private or semi-secret institutions. The UK Ministry of Foreign Affairs paid a company, and this company paid actors, influencers and activists in Slovakia to benefit the progress of Slovakia in 2023 and influence the elections. There can't be a clearer example. So if the EU wants to integrate these stories into their conclusions, we will offer them a textbook example of interference in the pre-election campaign for the benefit of a progressive Slovakia in 2023. It's an interesting approach that we even dealt with this at all. The revenue we give to the Russian Federation for that oil and gas, together, make up 0.2% of all the revenue that Russia has from mineral wealth. And you know well how much LNG has been flowing into France, into Spain, into Germany, into Belgium, into other countries from the Russian Federation, at a time when they accused us that by buying these small volumes of oil and gas for domestic consumption, it was good that we were not financing the Russian military machine. I am for the diversification of resources. How would it help now if the Druzhba pipeline worked? That's the whole length of it. They don't want it to work. They don't want it for strategic reasons. They don't want it. They'd rather watch us possibly face an oil shortage, maybe pay $2.50 for gasoline, for diesel, €3. But due to an obsession, they simply won't allow the Druzhba to open because it's a matter of the geopolitical relations we have here. How did the United States respond to that fleet of Russian tankers? They allowed and nicely said that it can sell that oil. So someone is acting rationally. Someone knows what to do in this situation. Now I'm talking about oil, and we're like stubborn people still in the same position. There is a normal obsession with Russia here. You haven't experienced it. You would have to see and hear those premiers when they speak. I don't have this inclination. I am not obsessed with any country in the world. Pardon? Druzhba pipeline was completed 60 years ago. All right, it's good that you mention it. Thank you, thank you. I said 50 years, that is 64, I was born. I wanted to ask one more thing. With a loving intention, you did not support the calls. Just about Ukraine, to be clear. In Ukraine, 25 supported it. I just wanted to ask if there was any room where there is no room for negotiations, because you mentioned that the Druzhba pipeline would be mentioned there on the fly. Could you tell us what the Slovak wording was that you would have required to agree to it? The Slovak wording is that Zelensky provide an exact date, and that it would be written in the conclusions that Zelensky committed to it being open.